Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is our community's house. We're all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all to our public hearing for Wednesday, November 12th at 7 o'clock. Public hearing is a quasi-judicial setting. The rules are fixed by the provincial government, and we have to follow them fairly tightly when we do follow through with a public hearing. And so I do have a bit of a script that I'm going to read at the front end of the meeting here before we carry on, and it explains the general layout of the evening. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act and is being held in a hybrid meeting format. Now, let me just make sure that we don't have our microphones on. There we go. Held in a hybrid meeting format, meaning there is a combination of in-person and electronic participation by some or all members of council or by staff and the public. The hearing is being streamed live over the internet and recorded in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Public participation in this hearing is being accommodated by speakers having signed up in advance, as stated in the notice of public hearing, as well as observers being provided the Zoom meeting information on the DNV website and in the notice of public hearing. Written submissions will be received by the corporate officer on behalf of and shared with the council at any time up to the time the hearing is closed. These may be submitted to input@dnv.org. Therefore, in this manner, all persons will be afforded a reasonable opportunity to be heard and to present written submissions. The chair has established the following rules for this public hearing. 1. Following the staff presentation, we will go through the established speakers list. At the end of the speakers list, the chair may call on any other speakers not on the speakers list. 2. Speakers will have 5 minutes to address council for a first time and are asked to begin their remarks to council by stating their name. 3. After everyone who wishes to speak has spoken once, speakers will then be allowed one additional 5-minute opportunity. Any additional presentations will only be allowed at the discretion of the chair. Speakers are reminded to not repeat information from their previous presentations and to ensure all comments remain focused on the bylaws under consideration this evening. 5. If a written submission has been provided, there's no need to read it as it will have already been seen by the council. Speakers may summarize or briefly reiterate the highlights of the submission. 6. All members of the audience are asked to be respectful to one another as diverse opinions are expressed. Council wishes to hear everyone's views in an open and impartial forum. Some important notes about public hearings. Council is here to listen to the public, not to debate the merits of the bylaw. Council may ask clarifying questions. The corporate officer has a binder containing documents and submissions related to the bylaw which council has received and which you are welcome to review. This is available on the table next to the door and online at dnv.org/agenda. Everyone at the hearing will be provided an opportunity to speak. If necessary, we will continue on a second night. At the conclusion of the public input, council may request further information from staff which may or may not require an extension of the hearing, or council may close the hearing, after which council should not receive further new information from the public. At this time, I'll ask the corporate officer to read the bylaw into the record, or the intro into the record.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 8743 proposes to amend the OCP in general terms by adding a land acknowledgement, a 2025 official community review section, and information regarding the land use map, adding or replacing policies to designate transit-oriented areas, consider transportation demand management measures, encourage diversity of housing type, tenure, and affordability, strengthen requirements to support residential tenants in rental housing sites undergoing redevelopment, support newcomers, update the rental and affordable housing strategy to align with the most recent housing needs report, apply incentives and requirements to encourage affordable housing development, and work with community partners to explore opportunities for social, cooperative, and innovative housing, including for Indigenous persons, updating the names of town centres and other terminology on the land use map, adding a subsection on amenity cost charges and related references in the OCP, adding information regarding the maps in Schedule A, and replacing Schedule C regional context statement in its entirety. No changes to land use designations or density are proposed, and Bylaw 8743 applies to all lands within the geographic boundaries of the District of North Vancouver, other than lands that are not subject to municipal jurisdiction.
Excellent. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to call on Tina Atva to do a brief introduction, and then we'll go to Jason Smith.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Your Worship. My name is Tina Atva. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Housing. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I always like to bring my hard copy of our official community plan. It is online, but this is the one that's a bit more enjoyable to read, I would say. The vision, the official community plan is the long-term vision for the District of North Vancouver. It has policies in different areas related to housing, business, climate change, transportation. Council has said that the vision of this official community plan, which was adopted in 2011, is still a good vision. It talks about our vibrant neighborhoods, our wonderful natural setting, calls for the need for strong and resilient businesses, and an excellent and improved transportation network. The update that is before you today in the bylaw is related to housing, and this is to comply with the provincial directions to plan for 20 years of housing growth to 2041. So although the OCP is all-encompassing, the focus of this update is very much on housing. With your permission, Your Worship, I'd like to turn over to Jason Smith, who's the Senior Planner in the Community Planning Department, to run through the presentation.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'll have a brief presentation, just giving some context as to why we're here today and a bit more detail on the content of the bylaw itself.
I'm going to ask you to speak nice and loud, though, Jason.
All right, I can do that. Is that better?
Much
Thank
better.
you. This project, they had to update the OCP, was in response to recent changes made to provincial legislation at the end of 2023 and early 2024. There was a series of amendments to the Local Government Act that changed in many ways how local governments do land use regulation in the province. But in particular, as it relates to this OCP update, was the need to accommodate and show in both our OCP and zoning bylaws that we could accommodate our 20-year housing need as established in our housing needs report, and that this work would need to be completed by the end of 2025. So the project update, the OCP, began in the summer of 2024, where we established the scope to look primarily at addressing the accommodation of the 20-year housing need. I won't go through the whole timeline there, but you can see it was a multi-step process to arrive at the point where we're at today, culminating in a decision by council to give initial readings to the bylaw being considered tonight on October 20th, after choosing between two options on how best to move forward. The option we did here does satisfy the requirement to accommodate our 20-year housing need. So the housing needs report, which was received just over a year ago, established, based on provincial prescribed methodology, a housing need of 22,369 units. Because the time frame ran from 2021 to 2041, we did include what has been completed in the intervening time with our latest dates. So the test we met in order to, or needed to meet in order to accommodate our 20-year housing need was to have roughly 20,000 units of capacity in both our OCP and zoning bylaws. Staff analysis does show that both our current OCP and zoning bylaws have the necessary capacity to accommodate the district's 20-year housing need. So no changes to land use or density were required to satisfy provincial requirements. So you can see here the OCP land use map as it exists today. There will be no changes being proposed through this bylaw. Though there are no changes to land use or density being proposed, there were some changes required to the OCP in order to satisfy the legislative requirements of accommodating our 20-year housing need. That included some adjustments to existing policies to acknowledge and address specifically our 2024 housing needs report and the numbers that contained within. Some of the legislative changes also enabled additional authorities that the district could implement. That was mentioned by the clerk in the kind of introduction of the bylaw. For example, inclusionary zoning to require affordable housing in existing zoning, or looking at implementing transportation demand management rules, are some things that are being enabled and for future decisions by council should they choose. There is also an updated regional context statement. This is a separate legislative requirement that the district needs to satisfy, and this was an opportunity to do that. The new regional context statement is simply an update to our existing one to reflect the updated regional growth strategy. No new policies are being proposed within that regional context statement. It's simply showing the linkages between the regional growth strategy and the existing policies within the OCP. Finally, there's a series of housekeeping amendments that are being proposed. As was mentioned, a land acknowledgement is being added. There's updates to how we refer to our First Nations partners being proposed, and there's some minor naming changes being proposed as well on some of the key maps. For example, in the original OCP, Lionsgate was referred to Lower Capilano. It's now more commonly referred to Lionsgate, so we're choosing to make a small amendment to reflect that current reality. So that pretty much encapsulates the highlights of what are some of the changes that are being proposed in the bylaw before council tonight. Should we conclude the public hearing this evening, the intention would be to come back at subsequent council meetings in December to give additional readings and final adoption in order to satisfy the legislative requirement to accommodate our 20-year housing need in our OCP and zoning bylaws by the end of this year. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I did just want to say, as we're getting started, I mentioned in the speech at the beginning there that it is a hybrid meeting. Members of the public, council, and staff can participate either in person or virtually. To that end, we have 2 members of council, Councillors Hanson and Pope, that are participating virtually. So you have all members of council present and participating in this meeting. At this point, I'm going to commence the public input portion of this evening's meeting. So I'm going to call on Ruben Rahim, followed by Carol Milne. Ruben Rahim here, welcome. And when you're comfortable, you'll have 5 minutes to address the public hearing.
Thank you. My name is Ruben Rahim. I'm here today to, I guess, express my disappointment that council selected option B, which really wasn't the choice of a recommendation of city staff, or in fact the kind of public meetings that were had earlier this year, where a majority of people picked the more housing diversity option. If we look at the map that was shown, it's really almost a status quo option with all the density squeezed into a tiny area to not, I would say, just keep status quo for the majority of the district. The status quo is what has not worked for us for the last few decades, which is why we find ourselves in a housing crisis where housing is unaffordable for so many people today. We look at Canada, second largest country in the world with a small population. It's crazy that our housing prices are, on par with countries like Hong Kong and Singapore with no land and 8 to 10 million people squeezed in, yet we have housing prices at this level. So we have to ask ourselves, why that is the case. And to me, I think it's the status quo of not making any changes. And looking at option B, it's really trying to avoid that by squeezing housing in a small area to comply with provincial regulations, yet trying to not kind of do anything. Looking at coach houses as well, the coach house can't be attached to the house. It has to be a separate dwelling, and that makes it inefficient from a land perspective and hard to build, not to mention 35% of the lots are excluded from being eligible for coach houses. I would ask council to reconsider the option presented and go with the staff recommendation of option A. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Carol Milne. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. It'll be quick. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me speak. And I wanted to say to you, Mayor, thanks for responding to me when I asked the question about the land acknowledgements, and I'm not sure if this is the right place to speak, but we're talking about all these housing, and if we don't feel comfortable knowing that we actually will own our houses, fee simple or otherwise, because of the precedent setting that just happened, is kind of a moot point. So and I've noticed that you've put unseated twice up on your screen there, and I just wanted to read off what, when I talked to one of the counselors in Richmond, what she had said, because they've been in a lawsuit with them for a long time. And she said, "We don't do land acknowledgements in the city of Richmond, with the exception of Councillor Wolf, who stated good meeting with an acknowledgement that mimics the one the school board does, whichever is the unseated bit. As we've been in litigation for years with Indigenous bands, our legal counsel has advised against saying land acknowledgements. The Richmond School District acknowledges and thanks the First People of the," I can't read it, I can't say this, Indigenous group, language group on whose traditional, and they changed the unceded to just say ancestral, where we teach, live, and learn. I don't know, I know you were mentioning that you were going to be talking to your lawyer to see if this would help at all, or I'm just wondering if, because you've got it twice up there now as unceded. So I know you're also going to be adding a land acknowledgement, which personally I don't think we should be doing, because everybody that I've talked to on the North Shore is very worried about their property. And with what's happening in Richmond, I'm just wondering if we should be sending out a letter like they did. I know it's causing a lot of havoc, but I don't know, there's a lot of people that live under rocks and maybe don't even understand what is going on. But, you know, Paul River has now changed the name of the hospital. They've changed all the street names. People can't say the street names. They don't understand what, you know, people are really worried about their homes there. So I don't know why we wouldn't be in the same situation here. You know, we're surrounded by Indigenous groups. So I don't know if anybody can speak to that, or if anyone can get back to us on, you know, where we stand in the district for our homes and the possible loss of a claim like Kamloops has right now. They're basically claiming most of Kamloops and Sun Peaks. So that was and I also go for option B.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to be clear, you know, when it's a public hearing, it's not really a Q&A. I don't really have the flexibility to just respond to all the questions and comments. So if you send an email, we're happy to get a response to.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, great. Next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert, I believe joining us virtually. Just checking in, we don't see a name that reflects that on the list of participants. Mr. Colbert, if you can hear me and you are one of the other names, then we can extend a virtual invitation over to you to be on the panel. But I don't see a name there, so I'm going to circle back. We don't have that many people signed up to speak, so I'll circle back shortly. This point. Okay. The next speaker I have is Vivian Souza. Is Vivian Souza joining us here in person or virtually? Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hi, sorry, give me a moment here. To the council, thank you for the time. I'm a little bit disappointed that the council voted for the option B to basically do nothing to enhance the future of our district. As I understand, the OCP is looking forward to the future and not the past. How is it that our future generation, our young people, my kids, your kids, workers in the districts cannot now afford to live here and really be part of the community? increasing the density in the town center areas. In other words, option A, I feel is really the best opportunity to create more affordable homes, as it is already zoned, parts of it is already zoned for the multi-units, and be done quicker and simpler than creating other zonings. It is close to transit, where, of course, these were designed to be close to transit, where families do not need that first or second vehicle. In my 10 years plus in this district, and always living close to major transit, I think the furthest was like 4 blocks away. I figure I have saved an average of over $5,000 a year, and in vehicle costs, gas depreciation, maintenance, and that is after taxes. This, to me, translates to over $50,000 for just my family. Multiply that perhaps by maybe 5,000 potential families that can move back to the North Shore, whereas right now they're commuting. I figure that that's an annual savings of over $50 million a year for families. Or if you want to extend it a bit more, it's $250 million over 10 years. That can be used for other expenses. So in closing, I just like council to reconsider option A and allow the additional housing density in key centers and corridors. It is about our future. Thank you for your attention.
For your comments, Vivian Susan. Welcome. Thank you. Okay. I'll now start seeing if anybody else present here would like to add their comments to the hearing.
Sorry, and I meant option A, not B, FYI.
That's fine.
I said B, but
Yes, come on up.
We have 600, well, first of all, my name is Rod Marining. I live at 1290 East Keith Road. Yeah, I have a lot of hard feelings about this council. I don't like you. I don't like the staff. I don't like anybody, and you probably know why. There's 600 homeless people in North Vancouver, according to some figures I heard. I don't want to say, but there's a lot of people, and I know them personally. They live in cars. They make an income of $1,000 from social assistance. And yeah, I just got back from Perth, Australia. You know, I was shocked. There's no homelessness there. There's no drugs there. Matter of fact, the freighters came into port and they found some drugs attached to the outside of the hull. That's how thorough they are in Australia about drugs. Anyways, my point is that we have, people can't afford. If you wanted to buy an apartment, or say you wanted to buy an apartment and you went to the bank and you had a good job, and you know, you just figure it out. You're lacking probably around, you're gonna have to come up with about $35,000 a year for your mortgage and insurance and strata and everything. You have to be making a lot of money. So what we have here is a lot of unaffordable housing, and people can afford it. And the reason why is simply in Australia, they worked on this thing every year for the last 30 years, where we've just tried to catch up right recently and trying to build this housing. So maybe 20 years from now, people might be starting to rent these places or be able to buy them, I don't know. But right now, we have, I don't know, somebody's mentioned 50, 60,000 empty places in the whole lower mainland here, and people can't afford them. So we have all these excess places, and they're going empty, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you that the key is social housing where people can afford, and that means taking a third of their $1,000, which is, that's $300, $400 for rent. I mean, if you're going to keep the social assistance at $1,000, then a third of that is $300 or $400. I mean, this is the problem we have here, and people, of course, you know, if they have in a situation like that, they're going to, some of them are going to turn to drugs or alcohol, whatever the space is that, and that just makes the situation worse. Because they can't even afford the car they're sleeping in after a while because they're drinking it away. The main thing I'm here for too is that one of the reasons why I'm upset about council is that you know, for me, it's just common sense. If you're going to build up, you widen the highways. I've lived here all my life. I was born Lionsgate Hospital. I'm 3/4 of a century old. And I see the same roads. I went down to Canadian Tire the other day, and it's still the same 2-lane mountain highway. Yet you're building these buildings up and up and up. It's a simple policy change you have to make, and that is if you're going to increase the density of an area, you take 20 feet, 30 feet of road allowance in the lane, in the front of the road. Every time you change the zoning, you change the roads. And you keep thinking, well, we'll have fast transportation or buildings or buses or something. It's still, you're gonna need high roads, and people need places to park. So every time you see this stuff, you just keep seeing the same thing over again. There's not enough parking, there's not enough, and now we're charging parking. And the place is going downhill. That's all I can say is when you have to pay. So that's about it. Thank you.
You're on. Okay. Would anybody else like to address the hearing? Yes. And again, I'll extend that invitation to all of our virtual participants. If you raise your virtual hand, we'll move you over to the panel so we can hear your comments as well. What would help us, if you're a virtual participant, is to give yourself a name that helps us identify you from the group. That would help as well. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Joseph Whiteside. I have lived on the North Shore since '93, but only in the district since June 29th of this year. Several points I wish to make. Affordability is an issue that is often mentioned, and Australia has been mentioned as a comparator. Australia, similar to parts of Canada, has no major urban affordable area. That includes Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, etc. We have the same type of crisis caused for different reasons in Canada than Australia. There is limited land. People want to live where they want to live due to the amenities, location, etc. We are driven by those factors as well as by immigration, which I hope Council turns its mind to how the immigration approach of the federal government is influencing a lot of these issues, because these are drivers that need to be more fully explored and thought through before community plans are amended. The transportation issue is nightmarish on the North Shore. I lived in Port Moody for 3 months while we were waiting to get our home. And commuting my wife back and forth from Port Moody 3 days a week was no fun. And I can't imagine what people do 5 days a week with the traffic that the rush hour starts at 2:30 in the afternoon on the cut. It's quite insane. Needs to be thought through more carefully by council and staff and by the provincial government. So I'm not blaming council for this. It is an interlinked issue in terms of the transportation challenges on the North Shore. The challenges the community plan to me faces is that the number of units you are obligated to provide permitting for during the time frame would require not only building at the current level year after year after year after year, but you would need to increase that by somewhat in the region of 350 units per year, per year, per year to meet the 2041 target. I don't know how you achieve that. I don't know how the building sector achieves that. I don't know where you find the lots to put it on, never mind the people who can afford to buy it. So that needs to be thought through more carefully. Not council's fault or not staff's fault. It is a huge challenge you face in trying to deal with the creation of numbers, frankly, by the province out of thin air with no cognition to reality. Where you find the people to build that number of units in addition to what is already happening, I don't know. I will speak briefly to the Aboriginal issue in closing, Mayor. I have had the privilege of working with First Nations in British Columbia for most of my public service career before retirement, including Squamish Nation and Tsleil-Waututh. However, I think in this case, I would urge Council to think through very, very carefully, particularly in light of the Cowichan decision, but also other cases that are out there, that land acknowledgements in any form need to be very, very prudently worded to ensure that there is respect shown, there's understanding shown of our First Nations neighbors and their location within the lands of the District of North Vancouver and their relationship to how development occurs within North Vancouver, but also the citizens of North Vancouver and the property owners within the municipality and within the district that are very, very concerned. I have friends in Richmond who are extremely concerned about this issue too. So I think this issue is one that is province-wide, but one that each local government needs to think through very, very prudently how land acknowledgements are worded, why they are worded in the way they are, what they intend to communicate, and how respect is shown both to Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh, but also to the community at large. I think those are my major points. I thank Council for their time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. The next speaker I have is virtual participant, and the name just comes up as iPhone. The person with the name iPhone, I can now see you on there. You are muted. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, clearly. Welcome. You have
Yes,
5 minutes to address the hearing.
Yes, thank you. It's Maria Giardini, and I'm sorry if you can't see my photo. I don't know how to work Zoom, so I have to apologize.
It's quite all right.
I had planned to attend, but I'm not feeling very well, and I don't want to infect anybody if I've got the flu or anything more virulent. I want to start by firstly thanking Council and the district for making this opportunity available to those of us who could not attend in person. It's very convenient, and I know it's probably expensive, but I thank you for that. Secondly, I wanted to briefly support the majority of Council in their decision to choose option B over option A. My view is that the voting that was done was very thoughtful on both sides. I've been to prior meetings and I follow the Council fairly religiously when I can. And I think all councillors deserve kudos for the job that they do. In this case, I felt that the majority took a measured and prudent approach. I acknowledge what other speakers have said, that we need to think about those folks who want to live here or who live here already or who have been born and grew up here, who can no longer afford to live in a single-family neighborhood. However, I think that moving too quickly can cause all sorts of problems. And we are seeing this already in a number of other communities adjacent to North Vancouver in terms of infrastructure and so on. I am very pleased that the majority did not take a sky is falling approach. We need to go forward very cautiously. I'm not saying that we shouldn't make changes. I'm not even saying that I agree with everything that the majority voted for in Plan B, but I think it's the best of all possible solutions in the current circumstances. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I believe Maria. Okay, the next speaker I have is virtual participant Shelley. Shelley,
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now?
I can clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much. My name is Shelley Williams. I've been a realtor on the North Shore for 24 years. And I have to say, the business of increased density is, I think, critical to our community. I'm a seniors real estate specialist, and there are many families that would love to have coach houses in the backyard so families can stay together. Grandma can be in the house and the kids can be in the coach house, or vice versa. And suites are also very important as well. But my most important comment for you today is the District of North Vancouver has the worst reputation for permitting and having access to planners. And when you're a realtor on the North Shore and you need to get answers for density or suites or whatever it is, this whole business about having to do emails back and forth, weeks and weeks later, I still don't have answers. We used to be able to go to the counter, talk to a planner, get our answers, and go about our day. And I just find that, you know, you're talking about density here. I hope your plan is to hire a whole bunch of city planners so that everybody can work together and we're not left quietly in the lurch trying to figure out what to do and why we can't give answers to our sellers and our buyers.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. I believe Shelley Williams. Okay, let's see, is there anyone else in the room here? Adrian in the back, come on up. And then I do have two more virtual speakers signed up, Maziar Shirazian and Corey Cost after that. So welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Adrian Chaster. I live on Crescent View Drive, just off Edgemont Village. And I wasn't planning to speak, but just briefly, it seems to me between option A and option B, the official community plan is an effective document, and particularly in its overall structure of setting up village and town centers. And those centers become the focal points of the community and service the residential areas surrounding. It seems to me that option A, which provided for increase, particularly in a couple of the town centers, but provides more density there where the infrastructure for transportation is, and works better than the idea of having disparate growth throughout the district, because that tends to take away. It militates against having focal points, centers. And so my view is that option A is the better option, that we can then maintain the overall architecture of the official community plan of having the centers, and sure, we add basement suites and so on and so forth, but to focus on the centers, then you've got the infrastructure. And the parking nightmares on my street, all of a sudden we've got a bunch of fourplexes and so on and so forth. Happy to have the people worry about the fact that we can't process it. There's places to park, there's the neighborhoods changing in dramatic ways where there's already the centers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Adrian Chaster. The next speaker I have is virtual participant Maziar Shirazian.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to the council. I don't want to go to the detail of population affordability. I think we've been heard that a lot. But I just want to bring one point that basically when council give this mission to the team to prepare a plan, they already acknowledge the problem. They know there is a problem, or the existing OCP was there. You didn't need to spend a lot of time to revise the OCP and then say no, we don't want to revise the OCP. The team they put tremendous effort. I just see it through the result. Compare it to the other plans that have been put by other municipality. You know that every other municipality is going the same route. So compare it to that, and you see that these guys put tremendous effort, do a magnificent job, and just saying that no, we don't want to be so quick. I heard the word quick a little earlier. This is not quick. The problem is already there. Everybody knows. Even the council who voted for option B, they acknowledge the problem because they asked the team to prepare a new plan. So please, it is already late. Of course, it has challenge. Of course, transportation would be challenging. You are not going to solve the challenges if you don't do anything. North Vancouver, like I heard the guy with 75 years old told they saw the two-lane route and from the beginning, and still is two-lane route. Yes, if nobody make a change, then we're gonna stay with the existing two-lane route, and nothing is going to be improved. So please go for option A. This will provide us with the opportunity to make a better community. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments, Maziar Shirazian. Next virtual speaker I have is Corey Cost. Have Corey over? Just waiting for Corey to connect here.
Good evening, Your Worship.
Welcome. I can hear you clearly. I'll get you to speak up nice and loud, but when you're ready, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay, first off, it should be known that I was unable to connect, even though he spoke about promoting me to a participant. That motion did not take place until you asked me, which is odd. Never experienced that. Anyway, let's get on with my presentation, which I am about to send to you a copy of the PDF file. So good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. This is the first public hearing that I can recall in which there are no changes proposed to land use or density, which is the primary, if not the only reason for a public hearing. Adding a land acknowledgement, changing policies, or encouraging diversity of housing type, tenure, and affordability, supporting newcomers, updating rental and affordable housing strategies, encouraging affordable housing development, updating the names of town centers, adding information to existing maps, or replacing the regional context statement heartily justifies having a public hearing. Change of land use or density are the heart of a public hearing, but none are being proposed. So why is this public hearing taking place? I don't expect a reply since this is a public hearing. If this were a public meeting instead, which I was hoping to have, then we can expect council members to enter a discussion with the community. Sadly, that of course is not allowed for a public hearing. There are many comforting statements in the accompanying report. While, quote, the character of residential neighborhoods will be sensitively preserved. Sensitively preserved? In whose opinion? Earlier, I sent council a discussion paper I had with AI. I asked the following. Under BC provincial regulations, can the district hold a public hearing if there was no change to land use designation or density? The answer? Generally not. I sent AI the North Shore News ad of this public hearing, and its 3-page report concluded that the council risks contravening section 464-3 of the LGA and creating potential grounds for a judicial review or bylaw invalidation claim based on procedural errors. Well, there you have it, for what it's worth. Personally, I agree with the AI conclusions. The process just doesn't feel right. Look at the number of participants you have. Look at the past of the public hearing when we established the first of these OCPs. This is a very small showing, which shows either a disconnection or that there's no proper procedure for people to participate. I hope you to consider what I have said and act in a more friendly way towards the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Cost. Okay, the next speaker I have, we're going to check and see in the room here. I have a couple more virtual speakers, but yes, come on up. And when you're comfortable, Stan, welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much for being here. I've listened to a few observations, and one of the observations was, sorry?
Stan Van Werken.
Stan Van Werkens. And there were a few comments that were made, which I think I can really relate to, is when you have staff working so hard on something, and council goes right, staff goes left, what do you think the residents think? The residents think, are they working together? Or are we here going separate ways? I'm in the line of business whereby I deal quite a bit with OCPs, zoning, land development. And that's the questions I got. I did not know how to answer it. So I think it's very important that we show cohesivity, collaborating with each other towards the public. Because if you last OCP was 2011, and it is now 2024, then my question is, when is the next OCP going to be changed before 2041? And then, what is the economic impact for Plan A versus Plan B? Because we have just a bunch of words. Everybody interprets words differently. Every person in their own home looks at their own home, looks 10 years out, does not look backwards, only looks forward. And now they see a staff and a council not working together is troublesome, is very troublesome. And that's troublesome to a lot of the community members. I've lived in the district since 1999. And when I saw that vote, I really had to I was trying to make sense, but I said it makes no sense. How can you divide the council and you're asking staff to do all this work, and the senior planner, I've been here at some presentation, has done fantastic work. There were 3 options sent first. There were 3 options there. Then senior planner was told to go back and say, hey, we need 2 options. That's how I remember it, and correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's important that we do this together, and that has to come from you. Because if you don't do it together, how can we be behind you? And I think the impact of younger people, I was speaking to 2 people in Ladner, and they have an OCP happening as well. And the OCP, that took probably 15 years before they had another OCP. We are not far away from that. And some of the younger people are looking like, what? Are you thinking about us, or are you thinking about something else? So there's a few points that I hope, I would love to help you. I think we all can help each other. And there's lots of different communities around the world. I come from a very small country in Holland. We have a very small country. We happen to be able to live with 16 million people in a small area where it is very organized and the infrastructure is in place. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to share that with you. And thank you for your time.
Mayor Little, I have to request that we explain why we are in this situation now before we go any further and people leave and are still confused. That has to be clarified, because there has been a lot of statements that are made and people are confused about what is going on.
Councillor, I hear your concern. I'm trying to stick to the provincial rules that are laid out, and I absolutely understand that those rules don't help us clarify things with the public generally. But I do see there are a number of questions that have come in from council that may help clarify some of those issues. And
can we ask one of the last questions first now to clarify?
Well, yes, and so a couple of speakers have had the impression that the council and the staff had a different position, and maybe I missed something in the media, but the staff recommendation was option B and the council supported option B. And
the original staff recommendation was option A.
But not at the time that the council made the decision to go forward with the OCP.
Because they changed it the day of the meeting. Mayor Little, I'm sorry.
Councillor, I need you to stop for a sec. I'm going to come back to this. Hang on. I need you to stop for a sec. Mr. Milburn, I'm looking for some advice. I'm obviously trying to follow the provincial regulations on it. This is not a public information meeting. Unfortunately, the obligation is on members of the public to get informed about the matter before we get to the public hearing, because it's not a great venue to be adding additional new information. What are you comfortable responding to on that particular question? We have a number of staff questions that have come up along the way, and I'm being very careful not to jeopardize the process along the way.
Thank you, Worship. Happy to respond. The fundamental objective of both options A and B that were considered in the first reading report, in particular, was to address requirements in the Local Government Act to amend the official community plan in response to the Council's endorsement of an interim housing needs report to reflect the housing needs in the community. Staff carefully noted within the first reading report that both options before Council satisfied the statutory obligations within the Local Government Act. It was therefore up to Council to decide in which manner satisfying those requirements could be achieved. Option A, when the report was written, was recommended by staff. That's stated in the report itself. Since the report was first written, the provincial government introduced at first reading on October 9th Bill 25, which proposed future amendments, and staff took that consideration and brought forward a verbal indication to council that while either option A or B would satisfy the requirements of the Act, option B could be useful in terms of providing a maintenance of the current policy so that we could adapt to future changes that were being proposed by the province. Again, proposed by the province, they haven't been enacted. So with that consideration, council weighed and balanced the different options, A and B, and chose to proceed with option B, and the bylaw before you tonight and the public notice are all related to option B. That is what the public is being asked to provide comment on and for council to consider.
Thank you very much. I think that we should.
There's no option A or B on this paper.
You're correct.
What are you doing? You're not communicating
Sorry.
with us. And we're the public.
We're working
Yep.
through the questions right now, Rod, but so what happens is there's a whole bunch of different plans on the table. We talked to people about more in-town centers versus out-of-town centers, maybe expanding the space of the town centers, and ultimately as staff worked through the process with the community, they made a recommendation. When the council viewed the recommendation, we thought that it was missing something, and the piece that it was missing was that if you could maintain largely the existing OCP and still comply. And so we directed staff to add an option that reflected largely our existing OCP. To be clear on that, as Mr. Van Werkens mentioned, the District of North Vancouver did ratify an OCP in 2011, and it was intended to go for 20 years. But you do a 10-year check-in. You can do a 5-year check-in if you want to, but we intended to do a 10-year check-in, and in 2021, we did update the official community plan with a more modern version, additional language, and recognizing the town center build-out that we had seen at that time. So we haven't left it untouched. The OCP is a living document that gets revised from time to time. We were not anticipating having a whole-scale review of the official community plan at this time. It wasn't in our work plan. We were probably shooting for 2028 research leading to a 2030 new official community plan. That would have been the norm. The provincial government decided in October of 2023 that all municipalities in the province of BC were going to have to update their official community plans to comply with new legislation, Bills 44, 46, and 47, particularly if you were a municipality over 5,000. And so that's the situation we're in. This OCP amendment was not originally planned by our council. It was compulsory, a requirement of the legislation from the provincial government. And so it doesn't have all of the trappings of a broad OCP plan that we did in both 2011 and in 2021. That's why we're here where we are. As Mr. Milburn just explained, partway through that process, there have been new pieces of legislation that have been introduced by the provincial government, specifically Bill 25, and because of that introduction, the staff recommendation changed. The original staff recommendation was for option A, and when the provincial government brought in Bill 25, which will impact almost every single-family house in the District of North Vancouver by moving them up to 4 dwelling units per lot, and if you're near transit, up to 6 dwelling units per lot, pre-approved in the process. And so the recommendation changed to option B so that staff would have more time to be able to consider things effectively on a case-by-case basis in the interim time until we decide how to apply it across the District of North Vancouver in an effort to comply with provincial legislation. Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Milburn?
That's correct, Your Worship. And just one point of clarification, there was a comment from the gallery. And just to note, when I refer to options A and B, I'm referring to the staff report, which is in the agenda package tonight, and the bylaw that council gave first reading to, and the bylaw under consideration tonight is bylaw 8743.
So so the options they sit in the report as option A and option B. And the council reviewed that matter. We had a council meeting, and 5 members of our council, is my recollection, voted that going forward, there would be one bylaw going forward. So option A and B were in the report. We don't actually vote between A and B. We vote on the bylaw that's prepared for your consideration here tonight. I understand that people still have, feelings on the differences between A and B, but our council did vote 5-2 that sorry? On the, so we can have staff clarify that, but a majority of council voted to have this be the motion be considered at this point. And so that's why you're not seeing A and B in this motion. Once the council decided which motion is the final motion to consider with the community, that's why it's written in that form. I hope I've been fair in all of this. I don't want to jeopardize the process. I'm looking around at my council members to see if there's concerns about how that's been presented, but I think it accurately reflects what's happened to this point. We have a fair number of questions that have been asked by the council at this point. And what happens is when we have a break in the speakers, we usually go to the council's clarifying questions. And then we do our best to get staff to both read the question into the record and read a response into the record. Councillor Pope, is this on what can I help you with, Councillor Pope?
Thank you for asking and noticing that my hand was up because it's been up for a little while. I actually felt like your clarification on what happened was not 100% on, because one of the things that was left out of it was that, and I think why this has become so confusing to everyone, is that the province announced that it was going to be proposing a policy regarding multiplexes, which changes every discussion about land use going forward. And that is why during the last discussion, I tried to get the discussion of multiplexes taken out of the conversation. And because it just skewed the way that the public had understood what they were being asked to do during all of our public engagement.
Okay. Yeah, and we addressed that at the time, and it was ruled out of order 2 separate times by myself and the clerk because you were attempting to revise the report, not the motion on the floor. And I did give you plenty of opportunity to make a change to that, and we couldn't find a way to accommodate those views. Your interest was to revise the report. The motion that was actually on the floor made no mention of multiplexes, therefore revising it to remove any mention of multiplexes was problematic. That's not really the purpose of this time and where we're at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our staff to go through the questions that have been provided. Again, read the question into the record and provide your response.
Are you going to coordinate?
Again, we haven't given you a ton of time to prepare these responses, so please do your best. And if we need to refer them to another meeting or get additional information, then we may need to do that. But over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I will start to read out the questions and refer to the relevant staff for information and answers. This is the first one. How many units have been rezoned since 2010? How many have been built? And I'll stop there and turn it to Jason Smith.
We track on our website through the progress on meeting on housing development, the number of units that have been built and approved since the adoption of the current OCP in 2011. And approximately 8,000 units have been built and approved since 2011. So roughly around 500 units a year is the average that we built on an annual basis, and that's reflected in the current numbers that were presented tonight over the last 5 years. The 2,600 units in the last 5 years have been built. So in terms of the number of units that have been built since the OCP.
Sorry, it is quite quiet. I wasn't sure. There was sort of 2 parts to the question. Did you get them?
Sorry, what was the second part?
Thank you. The first, if I may, Your Worship, I'll repeat the first question. How many units have been rezoned since 2010, and how many have been built?
I don't have the number at hand on the number of units that have been rezoned since 2011, but since the number I had stated before of approximately 8,000 units since 2011 is the number of units that have been built and approved.
Approved and built and occupied are all different things, and there needs to be a bit of clarity here. And this is the problem. it's confusing for the public and it's confusing for council
I get it.
when the answers are all different every time I ask. And I'm fed up with it.
So,
I'll go
Councillor-
back in an email that says we've rezoned
Councillor
5,700.
Murray,
We've
Councillor Murray, I
rezoned
need you to stop for a second.
7,300
Councillor
and built
Murray, you are out
5,700.
of order. Councillor Murray.
This whole process is
Councillor
out
Murray.
of order.
Yeah,
Including
as I
the
explained,
legislation. I know.
It's being. we're
Okay,
being compelled
I'm going to
do
be
this
good.
In this way. But what I will say is that I don't know that it is material to deciding on the issue tonight, because in either case, it's still.
There was questions asked in regards to the number of units.
Yeah. And that's fair. We should be able to give that number, and the number we have on the spot is that 8,000 approximately have been completed since the OCP was
Since
brought in.
2011, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, next question, read into the record and respond, please.
Thank you very much. The next question, staff's original recommendation was option A. How many units were contemplated in option A over and above the units already passed, with the addition of allowing every single family property to accommodate a basement suite and a coach house?
So under option B, which is the current OCP land use designations, there is a theoretical capacity of 55,600 units in the current OCP, and that is what is being contemplated in the bylaw before you tonight. Option A would have had an additional 13,500 units added to the OCP.
Thank you. Nope, that's correct. Next question. It's in the report. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question, how many people attended the open houses in regards to these amendments?
So in regards to the spring engagement, we had just under approximately 1,600 interactions. So the attendance at the open house, I don't have that number at hand in front of me, but we had nearly 1,000 surveys completed, and I can give you the number. We had 215 people attend the fall engagement on this process, and that number was larger, and I can provide it later, but I do not have it at hand here.
So 215 people attended the open house fall.
Correct.
Out of 100,000 people and 55,000
Councillor,
voters.
please, next question in response, please.
Thank you. Do we have any documents describing the cost of this increased density and how the infrastructure will be paid for? And Your Worship, I'd like to ask Andy Bell from Engineering to answer this, please.
No, no.
Checking now. Thank you. We do not have costs for the infrastructure, but what I can say is that we do have systems and bylaws and a financial plan that can help us respond to infrastructure costs arising from development. The proposed bylaw tonight enables us to continue to follow those and amend those costs and documents as needed by future development applications.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next question, how was the calculator that the province directed us to use created? I can answer this one. The calculator refers to the method the province said all municipalities must use to calculate what their housing need would be over 20 years. The province created this or released this to municipalities in 2024. They had earlier worked on this tool with UBC and others. The district had, as we know, has a housing target order as well, and the methodology we were familiar with. The methodology has 6 parts to it. It's detailed in our housing needs report, A, B, C, D, E plus F. The largest portion of that relates to population growth and housing needed from that. The other components cover items such as units, housing units for homeless individuals, housing units for people who are in extreme core housing need, a vacancy requirement, and a buffer as well. So that's just in a nutshell the components in that methodology, which were developed by the province in consultation with UBC is one of the groups I know they worked with, and then notified to all municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
My screen just went blank, so I just have to put my password in one more time.
Mayor Little?
Yes.
If I can, I'd like to ask Mr. Jason Smith just to clarify the question with respect to numbers of units built since 2011 and numbers of units built and approved. So that includes a combined total of those that are built as well as those that have been rezoned by council. This is an estimate of multifamily units, of course, that go through the approval process. So if I could, Mr. Smith, just to clarify.
Yes, and I apologize for any confusion. So built and improved was approximately 8,000 units, and the number of units that have been built, just built since 2011, was 5,300 units approximately.
I don't know that we'd have that number. We wouldn't have that number.
Your Worship, all of the units built received an occupancy approval. How many have been absorbed into the marketplace and are being currently occupied? We don't have a number to give you right now, but it would be the vast majority of those units. Thank you.
But in stream, there's about 2,500, 3,000 units that are working their way through the process as well, and they would be discounted from the total number of units under either scenario that needed to be completed because they're in the growth of the OCP that's contemplated under both options that were considered.
Your Worship, the housing needs report talks about a housing need of 22,400 units between 2021 and 2041. Certainly any units completed since 2021 would be helped to count towards our total in terms of need. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Thank you. The next question is the legislation that has triggered this bylaw amendment about social or non-market housing. What types of housing is it about? And I'll stop there for a moment and ask Zarate, the Manager of Community Planning, to respond, please.
Through your worship, the legislation requires municipalities to look at specific classes of housing needs for each local municipality. It looks at overall housing supply, but also looks at specific local needs. And these may include housing that is needed to support or address homelessness, to address housing affordability, as well as to address classes of housing as it relates to newcomers and for Indigenous individuals. And so it looks at, I'd say, a more broader spectrum of the housing continuum as opposed to being specific to social housing.
Yep.
Thank you. Another question. Are the lands within Indigenous boundaries part of the total number of units?
Through your worship, the number of housing units within the Indian Reserve are not part of the total count of housing units.
Thank you. The next question, was the Urban Development Institute a registered lobby group involved in the creation of the legislation?
Your Worship, I actually don't have the answer to that question right now in terms of registration of lobby group. They could have been. That's a provincial statutory requirement for registration of lobbying groups. It's not applicable to the district's work with respect to the public hearing. Certainly numerous groups were interested and were contributing feedback, so I would have no doubt that there was discussions between the UDI and the province.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll direct these next two to Dan Milburn as well. Were any of the municipalities involved in the design of the legislation?
Your Worship, prior to the development of the legislation, there was consultations across the province with certain staff in different municipalities. And all consultations related to the Housing Supply Act as well as the recent legislation in 2023 and 2024, such as Bill 44, 46, and 47, those staff members that were involved in those consultations were required to sign a non-disclosure agreement and could not speak about the information the province was discussing.
To the council. Or the king.
Your Worship, I'd like to call a point of order if I could. We have one councillor who's asking all of the questions here tonight and continually interrupting the chair and I think we need to follow the rules of a public hearing. Questions are meant to be clarifying, as you know, Your Worship, and these questions are not of a clarifying nature.
They're
So I think
absolutely
we
clarifying.
need to follow the rules of a public
We
hearing.
are following the rules.
Point of order,
Being made there. Thank you.
I will remind all members of council that we're attempting to help the public share their views with the council, and so
My point,
please
Your Worship,
keep their
respectfully, my point
comments-
was on the constant interruption of yourself as the chair, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take
Counsel,
order with that.
Counselor, stop for a sec. I have to rule on the motion first, and then I will come to you. So I agree with Councillor Back that we have established procedures that council can ask clarifying questions, and that should be the nature of the questions that we ask. I also do recognize that there's been a lot of confusion expressed here, and unfortunately, while it is not entirely of our doing, we are the ones that the public expects to be able to explain the situation, and so I appreciate council giving me a little bit of leeway to sort of go into some of the history of it. I normally would stick pretty tight to the script on these things. Having said that, I would just remind all members of council, please stick to the orders, the proper way to ask questions, to share them with staff, to give staff enough opportunity to be able to respond to them so that we can give good answers back to the community.
Have I not done that, Mayor Little?
Councillor Muri, you have interrupted me on several occasions today, and I'm trying to give everybody an opportunity to speak.
But as far as my questions, I've submitted what I'm allowed to submit.
Yes, it's the interruptions. You know I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak and respond to things, Councillor Muri. So do you have any questions or concerns about how this is being conducted at this point?
I have huge concerns how it's being conducted.
About my performance?
No, not your performance. In the information that we've provided to the community, the confusion that the community's in, the number of questions that need to be clarified, and the confusion in regards to the answers.
Councillor, it's not a point of order in the meeting. And so we're going to continue to fashion questions of a clarifying nature to help staff to be able to give good information to the community tonight. Checking in with Ms. Adva, do you have additional questions that have been shared with you that you have a response for at this time?
Yes, Your Worship, approximately 3 more questions. One, a procedural one. Can staff explain why we are having a hearing instead of a meeting, given that use or density are not being contemplated? And I'll ask Jason Smith to answer.
Through the chair, thank you. Section 477 of the Local Government Act lays out clear adoption procedures for any amendment to the OCP. And one of those requirements is to hold a public hearing. Any change to the OCP, regardless of whether it's text, land use, or density, requires a bylaw amendment and requires a public hearing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. Another question. Can staff confirm that the district's official community plan was updated in 2021? I can answer this question, having been part of the team that worked on the update, the OCP action plan. The OCP was not actually updated at that time by bylaw. There were 4 focus areas for that work, as many will remember, regarding housing, employment, climate action, transportation. And there was an action plan with approximately 8 priority actions, one, for example, being prioritizing rental, social, and affordable housing. And there were annual report backs on status of that. But the simple answer, the short answer, was that the OCP was not updated at that time. There were no amendments to the text or policies.
Can you say when the OCP was last updated?
I cannot say when it was last updated. There are amendments that will happen on a case-by-case basis, for example, with an individual development application that might change, might request a change to its land use designation. For example, building to a higher density, a project of that nature would go through a rezoning process, which could have included an OCP amendment. So I do not have a list in front of me at this time.
Mr. Milburn,
just to add,
would it be out of line to say that we've had more than 10 OCP amendments since that time that have updated the OCP?
That's correct. Yeah, we've on a case-by-case basis, and the OCP in a
living document,
its current
gets changed
form,
on a regular basis.
Yeah, in its current form, the general structure and so on was created in mid-2011.
Any additional questions, Ms. Atha?
Two more, thank you. Can staff confirm if any financial or infrastructure plan was included in the legislation?
Your Worship, just a clarifying point back on the question. So the question is, were the amendments made by the province to the Provincial Local Government Act, did those include a financial plan or infrastructure plan? Is that the question?
I think that's the intent, or did they contemplate a financial impact to the municipality, maybe an intent? I think recognizing the conversations we've had.
Yes. I would say in my conversations with the province, in their development of the legislation, and we can see in its application, it does contemplate that council would have subsequent conversations with respect to infrastructure need and financing. However, one thing important of note, the province has not clarified how it intends to meet financial and infrastructure obligations that would arise with this much housing being produced. And instead, what they've suggested is that local governments would use their existing tools as well as any tools they created under that legislation, such as Bill 16, to try to respond to the housing need to address the municipality's infrastructure and financial planning needs. And that could involve such things as amendments to the Development Cost Charges bylaw and amendments to our Development Servicing bylaw and others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Atha?
One more question, which actually has three, but I think these will be fairly quick to answer. First, is the legislation requiring us to count unit numbers that are built in order to comply? The requirement at this point is to adopt an official community plan by the end of the year that accounts for the number of housing units being roughly 22,000 that are needed in the next 20 years. So while we needed to count the numbers, determine the number and count the numbers and plan for them, we're not being, the legislation is not requiring us to count in any way other than that. Second part to this question, and my screen just went quiet again, how do municipalities force developers to build? We know that the development and building of units is contingent on a number of factors. Municipalities do not have the power in this case to force a developer to build. They will build based on approvals and market conditions. And lastly, is it the market that determines what will be built? That is a big part of it. Policy, regulations, efficient processes are parts as well that help influence what is built and when.
Ms. Atva, can I just clarify? I believe the question is the legislation requiring us to count unit numbers that are built in order to comply. I think we can make the distinction between the two different groups of orders. One, completions, and the other, capacity. Perhaps you could describe the difference between those two, and maybe that will get us to that answer.
Your Worship, maybe I'll take a stab at that and let others jump in as needed. I think the reference to completions is with reference to the Housing Supply Act. So that's not the legislation strictly that's essentially defining the need for tonight's bylaw. The legislative amendments that are defining the need for tonight's bylaw were Bill 44, 46, and 47, and those were all amendments to the Local Government Act. So within the Local Government Act itself, there were amendments specific to the need for council to, using a provincial methodology, adopt an interim housing needs report, which was done, and then to ensure that the needs reflected in that housing needs report were then reflected in the official community plan before the end of this year. So that's the key driver for the amendment for tonight. There are others, but that's the key driver. And that's within the Local Government Act and in part, indirectly, why staff are recommending the bylaw before you tonight.
Great, thank you very much. I'm sure there will be more questions as the evening rolls out, but I do want to get back to members of the public. I have a virtual participant, Heather Druga, wishing to speak. Heather, can we move Heather over as a panelist? Hi, Heather, can you hear me? Hi, Heather.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Oh, hi. Well, thank you very much for inviting the public to speak. I just want to say who I am first. I grew up in the district of North Vancouver, lived there for 25 years as I grew up, and then I moved to West Vancouver for 20 years, and now I live in the city of North Vancouver. As a citizen of the North Shore, I consider the North Shore as one place. And I'm finding it hard to hear all these technical arguments about the numbers and things. And I just want to remind people what we're doing here. As a resident, a person who grew up here, I feel conflicted because I want my leafy green Canyon Heights neighborhood to remain the same, but it's unlikely that that's going to happen because we're trying to make room for other people. And that's really, I think, the goal of this legislation. And should we be exclusive? I think no. So I'm also really heartened to hear Corey Cost speak about the intent of public hearings and the paucity of participation in regards to this one in particular. This is a super important conversation, and there's nobody here. There are maybe 15 people speaking. This is not right. And how come that is? I think it's because, as Councillor Murray pointed out, it's confusing. But I will put that back on the district. You guys have made this confusing. It's super easy. Is it option A or is it option B? What are the intent of our housing needs? If you look at option A, that allows diversity in key centers and corridors. It means that you have certainty if you're a developer. It means that you can create opportunities for lower density and multifamily housing. It means that you can proactively plan for services, water, sewers, parks, based on more certain location of growth over a long period of time. If we're going to close our doors, okay, great, but is that what people want? I mean, I don't really think that's what people want. I think people do want change, but they don't know how to approach it because this council is not providing leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker I have is virtual participant Henry.
Hi, Council and staff and Mayor Little. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak here. My comment was very similar to the previous speaker, that I feel like the council needs to have more leadership, and it really puzzles me why we're letting an undetermined act or a proposed act dictate our decision when we spend so much time and effort. And the public has spoken. I mean, we all want to see option A move forward, but I feel very concerned that we let something that's undecided kind of dictate our direction so quickly. And the fault to that is, have we thought about, our kind of direction if not Bill 25 gets enacted? If it isn't, if it's rejected, does that mean we go back to square one and do we go back to voting for option A again? Or is that we have to wait 10 years before we do that again, or have the opportunity to relook at that? So I think there's an opportunity right now to make a decision. And if we let that go, I don't know. I'm a very new resident to the North Shore. I've been here for less than 7 years. And, I always loved the North Shore. I want to see it grow. I think there's an opportunity for us right now to make a change. And it would be disappointing, in my opinion, that we don't take this opportunity and let the status quo kind of dictate us for the next 10 years. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the hearing? Okay. Over here and then there. Okay. So come on up. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
My name is Heather Skuse. I live in North Van. I've lived here a long time. And I've just jotted down a few notes as we've been speaking, because I wasn't really planning to speak. I was coming to listen more. So I'm going to say this twice. I'm going to say it at the beginning and at the end, because I think it's the most important part. The bylaw that is currently on the table, which is being voted on today, is the one that I read that allows North Vancouver municipality to keep control over development. It allows us to decide as a community what we want to have happen. It is the only option that has that in place. So for me, that makes it the most important thing to vote for. All of the other things that people have talked about are involved in the municipality keeping control of development. I don't disagree with everything that has been said. The permitting process is a problem, bylaw enforcement is a problem. So these are things that we need to address. That's separate from this, but it's getting, like, things are getting convoluted. Some of that I will talk to in a minute if there's time. I work in Burnaby. So one of the great things that Burnaby has that we don't have is a lot of co-op housing. So if we're gonna look at different housing, I suggest we think about co-op housing. One of the terrible things that's happening in Burnaby right now is I'm watching homes get torn down in the neighborhoods that I've worked in or walked through, and ginormous 4-story buildings being built on what used to be a relatively, like a single-family home or a home with a suite. Basically, if we were to go the way that Burnaby has gone, and I don't know for sure they have gone this is anecdotal, I, on my property, could build a ginormous 4-plex or 6-plex that would then change my entire street. I don't want us to do that, which is why I think the bylaw that is being recommended tonight is the one to go for. So there's a lot, there does appear to be confusion. It's not actually that confusing. I was at the last meeting. I was a little bit surprised that some people on council didn't understand the process, but that's beside the point. We are now voting on whether we want to keep control as a municipality of how we develop here. That is the question. It's not about whether we decide which centers are going to be bigger or whether it's my neighborhood that gets more housing. It's about having a conversation about those things as they come along. Do I agree that the province has overstepped its bounds? Absolutely. Is that a conversation that everyone here should have with their MLA? Absolutely. But that is separate from what's happening here. There's been some talk about why people don't come to meetings. I personally have come here straight from work, and I'm going to leave after I speak because I'm finding the behavior of people in the room offensive, and I don't want to listen to it. So I expect my counselors to be informed. I expect people to be even-keeled. I recognize you have passion because you're in this job. You're obviously going to have passion about it. But to have the meeting become heated where we're bantering things around, that's not helpful. That doesn't solve people's confusion. I appreciate very much, Mayor Little, that you've kept a cool. I appreciated it last time when you were being faced with some questions that I felt were, frankly, repetitive. So that was disappointing to me that somebody didn't get the message like when it was explained clearly the first 2 times. Anyway, that's all aside, but I think part of the confusion is coming from the fact that people are heightened emotionally and we're not being able to listen. I can even feel the emotion in my voice, and I've been listening and I've been reading, so I think I understand it. I very much appreciate what Lynn Valley is. I was there at the OCP meetings in 2011, when Mayor Walton referred to Lynn Valley as a black hole. I found it offensive at the time, and I have always found it offensive when people refer to Lynn Valley like that. But Lynn Valley was the poor part of North Van, so it doesn't surprise me that people thought that at the time. So I just think that going forward, the most important thing is what I said at the beginning. This bylaw that is on the table tonight allows North Vancouver residents and the municipality, the councillors, and us as a community to keep control of what we want our city to look like going forward. So if we want to keep control, this is the bylaw to vote for. And I'm not saying we won't have to change it later, but right now this is the one that allows us time to figure out how we're going to manage the province overstepping their bounds. Because it is not their role to tell us how to develop our community. It's their role to give us money to put in infrastructure, to build hospitals, to build schools, to help support the highway. That's their role. The role is not to tell them that next door to me, somebody should be able to develop the entire property. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Heather Skuse. And I believe here, Catherine.
I almost would have preferred to just sit there and shout it out, but anyway.
Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hello, my name's Catherine Fagerland. I live in Deep Cove, have lived there since 1981, lived in North Vancouver my whole entire life. Okay, so this confusion that everybody's having, it's very interesting to me that I'm a bit confused too, but the thing that's confusing us is that the province keeps changing, they throw out legislation in 2023, then they threw out a different interpretation, and now they're throwing out a different, it's as if the province is kind of throwing something out there, and let's see where it lands, and then let's change it again. The aim of the province's legislation seems to be to force municipalities to take on more housing because they feel that the municipal process is holding up development. That's not what's holding up development. It's market forces, it's immigration, it's all that other kind of stuff. All the forces that are way outside of the municipal control is influencing what's happening in housing. So I wish they would get out of the way and let the people who actually know what's going on deal with it and do, as the previous speaker said, fund infrastructure to solve the problem. And this, especially the confusion over the last couple of years, council had come along and done a whole bunch of work, as somebody else referred to. There was a ton of work going on to try to address what was about to change because of 44, 46, and 47. And then they changed the interpretation of that. So poor old staff and council are trying to react to something that by law they must comply with, and then at the very last minute, having told everybody that December 31st they have to have an OCP in place that reflects that legislation. Oh, by the way, we're going to have some new legislation in the spring, and that's going to change the interpretation again. I mean, I don't know how you do your work. I just don't know. You can't answer that kind of insanity. So for everybody else who's out there and for all of us who are trying to respond to this, confusion is bred by the province. It's your MLAs that you should be screaming at, not council. The other thing is in option B and option A. Option B, which I'm totally in favor of, already meets the mandate that's coming down from the province. Why would we want to overstep that? Somebody else was quoting the numbers. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it was way more than the province is saying we actually need to house the future growth of our community. Why should we increase the number of housing above what the province already says we need when we're already too crowded? Let's slow it down. Give ourselves time to catch up. The other thing I want to point out, as had been said 1,000 times, new is never affordable. What this is driving is new, and we don't need new. We need affordable. Somebody else mentioned co-op. We maybe need alternative ways of actually building housing, but we don't need more condos. We don't need more new. We need to retain what we've got and somehow work on making that stuff accommodate our growth as much as possible. There was another question about the public hearings and public meetings. I do feel like this whole process has been a bit rushed, but I also understand that it's rushed because of the province's deadlines. So yeah, we're having a public hearing right now. Given our own desire for process, we might have had more public information meetings and then a public hearing afterwards. But we've got a December 31st deadline. By law, we must meet. So thank you very much for all your hard work. I completely sympathize with everybody else who's confused and with councils having to scramble like crazy to meet crazy provincial legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Catherine Fagerlund. Next speaker. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hello, thank you. My name is Rob Haynes. I live in the Blue Ridge neighborhood. First, I want to thank all the staff for all the work that they've done in trying to prepare all of these things. The job, I know, is very difficult, and it's not necessarily everything that you're really hoping to do when you walk in the morning. And also for the council as well, for all the work that's done in essentially a situation that was not created by you, but was mandated by the provincial government. I think sometimes we forget that Victoria is demanding responses to things that weren't necessarily of their making as well, if we go back all the way up to the federal government. I would like to echo some of the points that were just made by the last two speakers. I think the last speaker really nailed it really well with the province is saying they need 23,000 units, but Plan B allows for a maximum of 55,000 units. So I agree that I don't necessarily see why we have to worry about the additional 13,000 unit capacity that would be from option A. While I understand people's positions of the density along those routes, I asked Susie Chant, our MLA, just about a month ago, okay, you're the province, you're demanding another 50,000 people live here, but where's the jobs? She had no answer for me at that point. Her only answer was, well, a nurse doesn't have to come from Port Moody to come to work here on the North Shore. That's not a new job. That's just her moving. And while I would encourage her to move to the North Shore, where are all these people going to work? How are they going to get to the jobs that they have if they have to go over that bridge? The real problem that we face here in the district isn't housing, it's infrastructure. It's another road, it's anything else. We can put one new person on the North Shore, or we could put 100,000 new people on the North Shore. Everybody is going to be planning their life around, uh-oh, if I don't get on Keith Road by 3 o'clock, it's going to take me an hour to get to Blue Ridge, or vice versa, or anything else. And none of those things have anything to do with the council. They have everything to do with the province and the federal government not supporting infrastructure in these 3 North Shore communities for my lifetime, and I'm over 50 years old. So I think that's the first challenge. I actually would really wonder later on, and maybe I'll talk to someone later, is can we just tell the province, no, we don't want to go by anything of what you have to say here, because you're not giving us the money to actually fund and do this. It's the market that's going to dictate whether or not a building gets built. And right now, I mean, we've seen developers go bankrupt in the last year. We've seen developers worry about their own costs. We've seen developers walk away from developments, not just people walking away from homes, but developers walking away. Where's the government for that? And yet they're going to tell us that we need to build 20,000 units in the next, well, we got 2,300 already. Okay, excellent. We need 19,000 more units in the next, what is that, 16 years? We need to build over 1,000 units a year for what? Where's the jobs? Where's the infrastructure? And I know I'm hitting on that point a lot, but I think council and staff, personally, from what I've seen, are working very hard on these issues that are not their fault. And I think we all have to recognize that our major problem is not whether or not someone can live on the North Shore, it's whether or not they can have a life on the North Shore. Because when you spend your time in the car and you're spending an hour taking the kids to hockey or soccer or anything else, that's quality of life. How about we improve the quality of life on the North Shore more than just because people want to live here? I mean, you got to work hard to live here. Nothing's free, including our roads. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you for your comments. Oh, sorry, folks. Appreciate you not making cheers or boos. We want to make sure people feel welcome to share diverse opinions. I'll check in with the virtual speakers at this point. And I believe I had a virtual hand at one point. They seem to have removed it. Are they over? Oh, okay. We have David. David, you're muted in the system. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Like many people at this meeting this evening. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Mayor and Council for the opportunity to speak. I would also like to thank all the District of North Vancouver staff for all the hard work they've done in putting this together for us. And like many people here, I actually wasn't planning on speaking tonight, so I don't really have anything prepared. But I would like to say that while we support development within the District of North Vancouver, we do have, my wife and I have concerns with regards to the increased density within the district that's being mandated by the provincial government. This has been brought up by several participants. And, you know, we understand the need for thoughtful development and housing solutions. However, it feels like the current approach, again, not a making of the council, appears to be to prioritize density over livability, speed over sustainability, profit over preservation. And we appreciate the stay that option B presents that will hopefully allow the District of North Vancouver Mayor and Council to grapple with these challenges that are being presented on a provincial and federal level. So we want to say thank you for that. I work in Vancouver. I have to go over that bridge every day, Monday to Friday. And I can get to work in 45 minutes on a good day, and on a bad day, it can take me 5 hours to get home. I mean, our transportation is a nightmare. It's overburdened. You know, it has people like myself questioning living in the District of North Vancouver. And this is just one of many things, you know, roads, public transit, schools, utilities, all of these need to be addressed. And I realize highways, hospitals, police, fire departments, like, they need to grow as our community grows. And there seems to be getting left behind because of this mandate on the provincial level. And livability and affordability is one of the issues that has been brought up. And, you know, the last research I did said there's upwards of 2,500 units, potentially more, that are active and available on the market. But those are only the ones that have been listed by the developers. There may be more that are currently in holding. So this suggests that this is an affordability issue and not an availability issue. And housing prices remain relatively high when compared to incomes for a large portion of the population. They can't afford to buy these new homes. So I'm not sure how the province's mandate is actually going to solve anything at this particular moment in time. Other concerns, you know, other than the traffic, there's parking, there's Highway 1 and regional traffic impacts. There is the great environment and ecosystem that we live in here in the district. And wildlife protection, wildfire management, biodiversity, stream and watershed health, interface fires all seem to have not been addressed. And I believe that those are concerns that Mayor and Council and staff will need to look at as part of this provincial mandate. I've sent my comments in or concerns in to info also as an email. There's much more information. There are much more questions for Mayor and Council to consider. Unfortunately, 5 minutes is certainly not enough time to go through it all. And I would ask that you give that email consideration, and I look forward to your response. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your comments, David. Would anybody else like to address the hearing? Stephanie in the back, come on up. I didn't see a hand, but okay. Was anyone else for after Stephanie? Yes, over here, yeah, okay. Welcome, when you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Your Worship and Council, thank you. My name is Stephanie Wilson. I was surprised to hear about jobs. My understanding is a major problem for people is that they have a job on the North Shore and wish to work on the they have a job on the North Shore and wish to live on the North Shore but can't find housing on the North Shore. Frankly, I would love to see the folks who work in my local breweries and coffee shops have a place that they could live here. Because they're already contributing to our community, they're already increasing our quality of life. I thought I knew what I was talking about, and now I'm really confused. However, we're talking a lot about housing, and I think we need to remember who is most in need of housing as well. I'm happy that OCP amendment process has recognized the importance of diverse housing options to support currently unhoused people. Because there are so few shelter, transitional, and non-market housing options on the North Shore, folks experiencing homelessness are trapped in a really impossible situation. Because if you're tenting or living in a vehicle, you get told to move along because you're in violation of a bylaw. And so you're still unhoused, you're just unhoused in a slightly different location. So I continually hope that a few words in an OCP do translate into action, because we deeply need real action to support people. And that brings me to the tenant relocation assistance policy attached to this bylaw, because you can resolve so much homelessness by preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place. Tenants of secondary units in detached homes are also at risk in their own sort of death by 1,000 dem evictions, as those properties are sold in land assembly or for other redevelopment. With the main house, secondary suite, and coach house, a property could have as many as 3 separate tenanted units if everything is broken up. This is not an insignificant number of people, and those tenants are particularly at risk as developments expand to meet the district's housing goals. This bylaw provides supports to tenants of properties with 5 or more units. However, I would like to see supports extended to tenants living on properties with 3 units. These tenants are just as vulnerable to dem eviction, yet often have fewer resources available to them compared to purpose-built rental, for example. And if multiplexes do go through, which now I'm very confused about, this bylaw should at least meet the minimum multiplex units provided on a lot, 4, I guess. Finally, I just want to bring up the land acknowledgement. I fully support a land acknowledgement because we do live on unceded land. We live on land that was taken from someone else without adequate compensation, and we can not recognize that, and we can pretend that it didn't happen, but it did. I don't understand why that would be removed. Recently, a fraudulent letter pretending to represent a North Shore municipality, the city of North Vancouver, attempted to raise really undue fears around Aboriginal title, and it was promoted by groups forwarding a racist anti-Indigenous agenda. I was embarrassed to call myself a North Vancouver resident after seeing that letter. There's so much anti-Indigenous racism washing over BC at the moment, between the current residential school denialism and fears around Aboriginal title with couch and decision. This isn't right. We live on the North Shore. I can go to Ravenwoods right now on land owned by Tsleil-Waututh and spend $2.2 million on a townhouse. So clearly folks aren't completely opposed to sharing land and coexisting. I don't understand this opposition. I've heard comments about learning new names. I grew up just outside of Prince George. We had a park called Fort George Park. It was a park. It actually used to be a ceremony for the Tseilei Tene. Many years ago, the park changed its name, and it took the Aboriginal name back, Chile Teddy Memorial Park, and there was a lot of racism, and it was horrible, but people got over it. When people go to Prince George now, they don't say, oh, I'm going to Fort George Park. They say, I'm going to Chile Teddy Memorial Park. So, yeah, I'm really upset about the conversations around land acknowledgement. And yeah, I would be really upset if that wasn't included in the OCP. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Stephanie Wilson. Next speaker I have over here. Welcome, and when you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ron LaTroy. I'm representing a lot on Capilano Road just as a point of view for it. It's a 77-foot by 137-foot lot. And the municipality is designated as R4 on Capilano Road. Nobody's going to build a house on that size of lot with a highway out in front of them, and that's exactly what Capilano Road is. So you come into the municipality and say, can we subdivide? No, you're 2 feet short. Well, could we go to rezoning? No, we wouldn't support that. So you say, what about arbitration or no, we wouldn't support that. Now, when I heard that Mr. Eby had put a fire under everybody's butt to get going here with some more development and smaller lots, I'm thinking the lot on Capilano Road will be able to be subdivided at least into 2. But no, it's not going to go anywhere. And yet, just down in the municipality of North Van, you can subdivide a 50-footer into 2 25s. So I just fail to see where you guys are getting ahead of the problem, because 3 lots or 2 lots on Capilano Road could lower the price of a home, of 2 homes going in there, because obviously the lot is going to sell for less money in 2 lots than it is in 1. So I really think that rezoning has to look at the size of the lot and move on with it. And another issue that I have too is this, when I phone a municipality and they say to me, we're on the land of so-and-so and we walk on it carefully. No, I'm not interested in listening to that and having all the buildings and streets named after somebody that I have no idea who he is or what it's all about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You may want to look up Capilano, but yes, thank you. You may want to look up Capilano, but yes.
I know, you're talking about changing it to another name, is it?
No, Capilano is a First Nations name. It's
okay.
After Chief Joe Capilano was a First Nations chief with the Squamish Nation.
Oh, yes, I know that. I don't mind that there's roads named after certain, you know what I mean? I'm not arguing that point, but it bothers me when I phone the municipality and maybe not this one, I don't call this one often, but like the Duncan municipality, I have a development over there, and they got to give me this big spiel before I can talk to anybody, and I don't appreciate it.
I will just mention to you that we are also reviewing our single-family zoning. It's probably, I don't know, December 2nd would be the next piece on it, and that's very specifically to what you can build on a single-family lot. It's a separate process, but yes.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
I will come back, and you're a firecracker.
Would anybody else like to address the council a first time? Okay, I'm just going to check back in. Do we have any additional questions that have been shared with the staff?
Your worship, I see no additional questions at this time.
Would anybody else like to address the hearing a first or second time? Come on down.
Joseph Whiteside, Lynn Valley. I was thinking about these issues, Mayor, over the past week, and it came to my mind the Jonathan Swift story of the Irish Modest Proposal. And my modest proposal to assist council in complying rigorously and fully with the desires of the current provincial government is, for example, to zone all cul-de-sacs within the district to achieve that goal. I live on one such cul-de-sac. I've only been there 4 months, but it's a lovely cul-de-sac. And the idea would be you've got 10 homes, single-family homes down the cul-de-sac. You designate that under the province's mechanism, and you could build probably 60, 70, 80 units on a cul-de-sac in a current single-family residential area with a narrow road leading onto another relatively narrow road leading onto either Mountain Highway or Dempsey or onto Hoskins. And then you're going to have just another massive traffic jam at Lynn Valley and Mountain Highway, and no one's getting anywhere. So I think the dilemma the council faces is an extraordinary one. I think the dilemma staff faces in coming up with ideas to assist council in working through is significant. I worry where we're going, Mayor and Council, I really do. I did make one comment earlier about land acknowledgement. I want to make it very clear that I am in favor of having land acknowledgements that are wise, that are sensitive, that are sensible, and that are well thought out in terms of the legal implications they may have. I have no difficulty with a properly worded land acknowledgement. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Very much. I have 2 virtual participants that have expressed an interest to speak a second time, so I'm going to go to Corey Cost first, followed by David. Corey Cost, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, Your Worship.
I can hear you.
Well,
I can hear you clearly.
a lot
Welcome. You have 5 more minutes to address the hearing.
Well, a lot of facts, so-called facts, have been toted about, so let's correct a few. The 2011 OCP said it will be reviewed in 5 years, not 10 years, as stated, 5 years. And I quote on page 81 of section 12.1 of our original OCP from 2011, to ensure the ongoing validity of this plan, an OCP review will, notice the word will, occur every 5 years. No option, never done. My records which are on Excel spreadsheets, have logged every occurrence of development in residential properties. All units considered, and I have no idea what their states are, some I do, but in total, since 2011, 14,904 units have been registered on my Excel spreadsheet. How many acres of parkland have we built since 2011? A minimum of 8 acres per every 1,000 people. A maximum that I think would be quite acceptable would be an additional 119 acres. I doubt if we even kept up with our acreages. Staff remark on section 477 on a change to the OCP requires a public hearing. Is this really true? Province said no public hearing can be held on a zoning change if it is consistent with the OCP. Of course, this applies, I assume, only for residential changes. But there is a lack of clarity just when you can hold a public hearing and when you cannot. Personally, I agree with choice B that Council made. It gives people much more control over their own community. Now, 2,000 people per year is sort of a goal by the province. But the growth, as stated by the Metro median scenario, you can readily go to that document, amounts to about 0.6% per year growth. And when you multiply that out, that's about 600 people, not 2,000. So the Metro's own median scenario indicates a growth of about 600 people per year. And that's all I have to say. I hope you find those statistics and numbers useful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Corey Cost. The next speaker I have is virtual participant David. David,
Good
can
evening
you hear
again.
me? Yes, I can hear you.
yes, I
Welcome. You
can.
have 5 additional minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much for the additional time to address the hearing. I wanted to follow up with an example with regards to infrastructure and regional traffic impacts within the community that I live in, Lynn Valley. We may recall that up in Lynn Valley several years ago, there was a stabbing that brought out the RCMP and first responders, and that was publicized heavily in the news. A very unfortunate situation that occurred not too far from where I live. About a year after that, I was out for dinner with some friends, and we were down at the village, Lynn Valley Village. And in the village, there was a group of teenagers that were running around with what turned out to be cap guns. But they looked like real guns, and they had the caps in them, and they were firing them off at people. North Vancouver RCMP were contacted, and the incident was reported to them. Shortly after the incident was reported, I received a call from the constable that was sent to respond to the issue, and he had indicated that he was going to be a while because he was stuck in traffic and would not be able to respond immediately. Now, that was give or take 5 years ago, maybe 4. I'm not exactly sure, unfortunately. But since then, the District of North Vancouver has continued to grow, and the infrastructure, as we've talked about, hasn't grown with it, both to allow for people to move throughout the community, for first responders to respond to emergency events, and protect the people that live in those neighborhoods. So as part of this mandate that we're been forced upon us by the provincial government, of course, we look for support from the provincial government to support Mayor and Council and the people that live in the community so that events like this don't occur. Like one of the other speakers indicated, there are many people that do not live on the North Shore, but work on the North Shore. For example, for me, that's my ophthalmologist. And he lives in East Vancouver, and he works here up at the village, Lynn Valley Village. And he commutes from Vancouver here every day. And, at my last eye exam, he's talking about wrapping things up and leaving Lynn Valley because it's becoming too difficult to get not only here, but to go home and spend quality time with his family. And so I bring up these 2 examples because it's important that as we grow as a community, that all the elements that we need to support our community grow with us. Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you for your comments. David. Would anybody else like to speak a first or second time? Yes, please come on down. Well, when you're comfortable, you have an additional 5 minutes to speak to the hearing.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it less than that. Just, there have been a lot of comments about how the province is enforcing these housing rules on municipalities and how bad it is. I think we have to consider as well the municipality is not an island, but council is. You're voted in by members that live in this community, property owners primarily. And as a property owner in Edgemont myself, it's in my best interest to not have more housing here because my property will go up in value. It's in my best interest to not have people living here because there'll be less traffic. But ultimately, we have to look at it from a societal benefit perspective. North Van District is not just by itself. We're part of the Metro Vancouver, and we're part of Canada. And both Metro Vancouver and Canada have to economically grow in such uncertain times. And having a shortage of housing, which causes people to not want to live here or struggle to live here, is not the way forward. So while nobody likes the province dictating stuff, in this case, to me, they're really representing future residents of the community and of the province in general that we as municipalities have to accommodate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else like to address the hearing for a first or second time? Okay, would anybody else like to address the hearing for a first, second, or third time? So I'm going to formally, I'll double check with staff first. Do we have any additional questions that have been received?
Your worship, no additional questions.
Okay, so I'm going to formally exhaust the speakers list. This is going to sound a little old-timey, but for a first time, would anybody else like to address the public hearing? For a second time, would anybody else like to address the public hearing? For a third and final time, yeah, come on up. That's why we do that. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have an additional 5 minutes to speak to the hearing.
Just a thought here, just a comment, is that I hear that there's not a lot of infrastructure happening around the North Shore. The view I have is this, is that a lot of some of that infrastructure is being, I think, financed by the developers. I know that I'm experienced that from the Lynn Creek area. They've dug into the infrastructure in the last 6 months. That's what we've been living through over the summer. It's still going on. And that is also going on, I believe, in the other centers. And the cost, I would think, of that, of all those gas lines and water lines and everything else that goes to developing the town centers, is now there or is on its way as developers supports the infrastructure. So I kind of disagree that nothing's happening there because I know that the staff too is doing a lot, planning department is working with the developers to put all these pieces together. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll start the closure again. First time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? I have a virtual participant. Maziar Shirazian, can we move him over as a panelist?
Hello
Welcome.
again, this is,
Yeah, welcome. We can hear you. You have 5 additional minutes to address the hearing.
yeah, it won't be too long. I just wanted to clarify a point, which it kind of confused me. And that was the team, actually, the team's recommendation was option A. And then when Bill 25 came into the picture, although it has not been approved, they changed their recommendation from option A to option B. So Bill 25, I just checked on it. I didn't know about that. Bill 25 means more density in the area, and that's coming from the province. And to me, this recommendation means, okay, we still want more density, but we're not going to decide. We'll leave it to the province to decide. And it kind of shooting ourselves in the foot if we think that we don't want more density, but leave it to the province to decide. It's kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, I guess, like in terms of the community.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Maziar. Okay. Would anybody else like to address the hearing? Oh, you coming up to speak? Yeah, come on up. Welcome. You 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hey, I'm Carl. Can I talk without the microphone?
Unfortunately, we need to get on the record, and we have virtual participants, so.
Sorry about that. So we're here to discuss the bylaw, and we haven't yet chosen an option. I'm just really confused on that, so that's my question to you.
Option B has been, the contents of option B have been put into the motion that we're actually considering here. So it reflects the old option B, but it's now in a form that is actually the recommended form.
And we will decide that or finalize that on December 30th, the third final hearing or whatever, the final.
The date?
The date.
Adoption date? Do we have an adoption date? Has to be adopted by December 31st.
Okay. Thank you for your patience and time.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I don't know that the adoption date's been set yet. Is it? When's the adoption date? Okay. So I'm going to go over that after we've closed the hearing. Okay. Okay. Checking back in. Would anybody else like to address the hearing? A second time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? Third and final time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? Okay, I believe we've exhausted both the virtual and in-person list, and so Council, I'm going to be looking to you for a motion. Councillor Murray?
I move that we close this hearing and return this bylaw to council.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Ma. Okay, prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. So what that means is another confusion here. It means that Council's not allowed to receive additional feedback on this particular matter until the matter comes back, is actually fully adopted. Now, in practice, normally the closure bylaw is about a specific property. It's 1801 such and such a street, and generally avoiding that as a topic is pretty easy to do. And so my question to the clerk is, how on earth do we avoid things that are captured in the OCP as a whole in closure?
Through you, Your Worship, Council has to be very cautious when receiving any new submissions or information pertaining to this particular bylaw, and it is quite a large, all-encompassing bylaw. So that would include anything in written form or otherwise, including public input or at council meetings. So public can still contact staff if they have questions.
Thank you very much. So if you're wondering whether you can ask additional questions about the OCP process or about the specifics in the OCP, you are welcome to talk to staff. You are actually not welcome to talk to council. Council has to make their decision based on the information that they've received up to the close of the public hearing. And so at this point, I'll check in with the clerk. When are we anticipating this item is going to return for second and third reading? Under either case, you're not allowed to talk to the council about it, but yes.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Council cannot receive new information.
New information. Thank you very much. And so what date is it anticipated to return for second and third reading?
December 1st.
So December 1st is our anticipated return date for this item, but we're not able to lock in our agenda quite yet. And so what we need people to do is watch the agendas in the week before. That's what we intend to have it land on is December 1st. But at this point, you'll have to wait until the week before to find out whether or not it actually does end up on that date. And so at this point, we've completed the business of the public hearing. And so I'll accept adjournment to the meeting. Accepted. Thank you very much for participating, everybody. Have yourselves a fantastic week. Good night.